So we've discussed the differences between primary data and secondary data. And although we actually will be talking quite a bit about both types, because while I didn't mention this when we talked about the research process, while I didn't emphasize this when I talked about the research process, interacting with secondary data before you begin recording and collecting your own primary data is a tremendously important part of the research process. Because particularly, regardless of whether you are doing an MA, a master's, which is meant to be mastering a particular topic, you don't have to contribute anything new. You just have to master a research method, and you have to master a particular topic, making sure that you have read and understood everything that has been said about this. So if you were a master's student, you can't master anything unless you have read the secondary data, books, monographs, relevant articles, journal articles specifically. And if you're doing a PhD, you can't actually claim to be doing something new if you haven't read everything that's been done. So we've talked about the differences between primary data and secondary data, and now we're going to introduce the various ways that we can record and collect this data. Following this, there will be a short X-Mind exercise where we will be pointing you in the right directions if you want to know reference books and monographs, handbooks that will teach you the various methods. But we will also later on in the course be doing a series of exercises where we will be showing you about how we pull all of this stuff together, how we scan field notes, how we record interviews, how we file them in folders and begin to do transcripts. So there will be more about this, but this is just really an introduction to the types of data collection options that we have available to us. So let's have a look at this together. Let's go to full screen and let's have a bit of a look at the range of data collection methods that we are able to use. This is taken from Dawson, 2009. It is from chapter 7. You'll see it's page 67 there. It's all up there for you to have a look at. So there are a number of data recording methods, and all of these have advantages and disadvantages. We're going to be dealing specifically, Dawson summarized very helpfully the advantages and disadvantages of audio recording equipment, video recording equipment, note-taking on both paper and laptop, and what he calls box ticking. And I think you know me well enough by now to know that that would be my absolute least favourite way of recording data. So let's look at these individually. So there are a number of significant advantages in using audio equipment. And this is something that I have used extensively. You will remember when I talked about my own personal research history that I didn't use a camera. I photographed nothing. That I wrote notes in my notebook, and I used a audio recorder. I used a very high quality audio recorder called a Zoom H1. It is small, It runs on one AA battery and a mini SD card. Amazing, wonderful piece of technology. And so if you are recording things, you can actually concentrate on listening what people say. You can have eye contact with people. And that is, in most research contexts, tremendously important. You have a complete record of the interview to analyse, and you will use this, of course, to produce a transcript, an interview transcript. And I am going to be talking quite a bit about best practices about transcription. This is a great way for you to record everything and give very, very useful quotations, direct quotations. You don't need to be concerned about not having written everything down because you are recording it all. The disadvantages are that you have to rely on equipment, so you must be very careful. If you are using your mobile phone, you have to be careful specifically about two things. You need to be concerned about the quality of the audio. You need to be aware of having enough storage, which particularly for iPhone users is a very big problem. Androids allow you to insert SD cards, at least most of them. So you have battery problems, you have quality problems, and you have storage problems. For that reason, I would never personally do interviews, especially if you have intensive field work where you are recording for hours at a time. I would not do that with a mobile phone. The other disadvantage is that you can become complacent. Oh, I am recording everything, and sometimes that means you don't listen as much as you should, especially if you are writing things down. The other disadvantage is that in some contexts, people will not give you permission to record, and of course, permission must be, you must ask permission from informants before you record. To not do so is unethical. There are other ways of recording, and this is something that I am very involved with at the moment. Visual recording equipment, and by that is meant both still images and moving images. Obviously, in the past, still cameras took stills, video cameras took video. These days, mobile phones do all of that. One device does all of that, and it does it very well and very cheaply as well. By using visual methods, you make a comprehensive recording. And it gives a permanent record of what is said, and it also includes a record of body language, facial expressions, and interactions. The disadvantages are that the more equipment you use, the more chances there will be something go wrong. Most of these problems become less the more experienced you are, and there is no substitute for experience. Some mistakes are unavoidable, so the secret is to avoid the avoidable mistakes and to learn from any and all of the mistakes that you experience. These days, the issue of expense and difficulty in transport is now a non-issue. But what remains an important issue is that particularly with interviewees that you don't know, and it depends on their background, they may feel very, very nervous about the presence of cameras, especially big cameras and lots of equipment. And that is my reason for going out of my way to use small, simple equipment. Note-taking. You don't have to rely on equipment that may run out of power, may run out of memory. It is by far the cheapest way to record data, and this is significant if you are on a particularly tight budget. Interviewees may think that they have something important to say if they see you taking notes. The problem with writing notes, there are many. The inability to maintain eye contact is one. And it's very difficult for most people, particularly if you are working in what is your second or third language, it is difficult to concentrate on what's been said at the same time as writing things down. If you were to be writing everything down over a full day compared to just recording, this is incredibly tiring. This is a very, very important point. And the other is that although we may be able to write down some quotes, we won't be able to record as many full verbatim quotes in the final report. Finally, there's a type of research where you go in with specific questions, you are after particular data. It's more of a survey, and it's more of a survey than a series of interviews or participant observation. And you can have a criteria. I want to know this about the community. The criteria, you go down, you ask yes or no questions, or ask people to tick their preferences. These are easy to use, they're easy to analyse, and they're easy to compare. They are, however, inflexible, and so must be used with some caution, and it forces interviewees to answer in a certain way. In some situations, particularly when you're at the end of a series of interviews or field work, and you are wanting to get specific answers to specific questions, this may be done, but it is just a bit too inflexible. And some interviewees feel that they have not really been listened to that much. Okay, data collection methods. We'll now cut to a X-Mind summary, which will push you in the directions that you need to go in terms of reading. We'll pose some questions, might write some of the comments that we've made, and make a list of the important points that we have revisited or will be revisiting. Because what we're planning to do here is to kind of provide you a web and a matrix for you to link certain ideas, certain skills, certain tools and methods all together. And so the more that we revisit reference books, important handbooks, and in some cases some videos, the more you will be able to follow what we are doing in this course on ethnographic research methods. So I hope you enjoy this X-Mind summary.